Chapter 2: Selecting Methodology and Evidence-Based Practices. When considering a student's educational needs, selecting methodology or educational practices that are evidence-based help teachers select programs or practices suited to the skills that need to be taught, the population of students you're teaching, and the best setting to teach the skills. In this chapter, we will review how to find an evidence-based strategy or practice to teach students with disabilities the skills identified in their IEP goals. In the decision-making process, selecting appropriate evidence-based practices to use in instruction is next in implementing the IEP. Two instructional considerations teachers need to be aware of are the curriculum and evidence-based practices. Curriculum is adopted by school districts as a framework to teach students the knowledge and skills they need to learn. Instruction is the way the curriculum is delivered to students. Evidence-based practices may describe instructional strategies or published intervention programs. Considering the thread we discovered for Donnie's team identified that he needs to work on blending sounds in order to automatically read short vowel words. What intervention, strategy, or practice is best suited to fill this need? Where might his teacher find an appropriate methodology or method of instruction to teach the phonics skills of encoding and decoding and supplement the instruction he's receiving in his classroom? Let's start with a definition. What are evidence-based practices? Skills, techniques, and strategies that have been proven to work through the strongest research studies. They have a positive effect on student outcomes. This occurs when multiple high-quality studies have been conducted, following acceptable protocols, and they've been reviewed by a reputable organization such as What Works Clearinghouse, IRIS, or other government-approved organizations. These methodologies can be trusted to work with students. We have such a short time with our students, we need to use practices that work. In the next video segment, Robin tells us what she considers when selecting methodologies for her students.
When determining what kind of methodology I should use for students in my program, I look at a couple things. I look at the most recent evaluation, IEP, and then I combine that with a combination of informal assessment and observation. From there, I use those tools to help me determine what's most appropriate for that child. So for example, I have some students in my program who have shown to be more successful with a rigid methodology such as discrete child. And I have other students in my program who have shown to make gains and to be successful with direct instruction.
Stephanie discusses sources of evidence-based practices in this next segment.
To select appropriate methodology and evidence-based practices, there are a lot of resources I turn to. Each student is different and their needs are all different and they learn differently. So as special education teachers, we have to find the methodology that works for every student. And there are a lot of different places that I go to. The state website is a good resource. Idaho Training Clearinghouse is also a good resource. The Council for Exceptional Children, they have a lot of good information that we can use. But once you find something that you want to try, you also want to progress monitor. That's so important because you want to know if it's working for your student. You want to know if they are increasing their skills. And so that's the evidence. If they're moving, we do our own research. If they are increasing their skill, then that practice is working for that student.
To find an evidence-based practice for your students, First, identify the student's specific needs you want to address. Second, locate the evidence-based practice proven to be effective for a similar group of students in the same skill area. There are many great evidence-based practice resources to look at on the web, but in this module, we're going to take a look at What Works Clearinghouse. A document with hot links to the What Works Clearinghouse is provided in the Resources tab at the top right of your screen for you to download. What Works Clearinghouse's Find What Works resource allows users to identify interventions, programs, policies, and practices that have been shown to have a positive effect on student outcomes. If you go to What Works Clearinghouse, you can watch a video tutorial of how to find what evidence-based practices work, sort and filter your search results, and dig deeper into specific interventions and studies. Here are the steps I took when I searched for an intervention to help Donnie. First, I selected the topics literacy, children and youth with disabilities, and kindergarten through 12th grade. Next, under More Filters, I selected for Grade 1, Small Group Setting under Delivery Method, and Supplement under Program Type, since Donnie will be receiving grade-level reading instruction in his regular classroom by the content specialist, his first grade teacher. He will receive additional pull-out for specially designed instruction in the resource room to supplement his grade-level reading instruction and general ed. Next, I selected the Done button. On the What Works Clearinghouse webpage, these are the results of my search. Note, Reading Mastery is gray and does not have a box around the Children and Youth with Disabilities icon. This indicates mixed effects, negative effects, or no discernible effects were found in the study for this population. Next, I checked each one to compare these practices. When viewing Compare Evidence-Based Interventions, we find out of the 3 interventions we compared for Donnie, Peer-Assisted Learning Strategies, PALS, is the best fit for his skill deficit. Donnie needs help learning to encode, blend sounds together, to read single-syllable short vowel words. Peer-Assisted Learning Strategies is a practice that can be delivered in a small group setting. It's designed for students in Donnie's grade, grade 1, and the plus indicates this supplemental practice had potentially positive effects on alphabetics. Alphabetics focuses on the word sounds and blending Donnie needs to learn. It also showed potentially positive effects in comprehension, reading achievement, and reading fluency, all skills Donnie needs to improve. While Linda Mood phoneme sequencing program showed potentially positive effects on alphabetics, comprehension, and fluency, only PALS hit all 4 reading skill areas that are aligned to Donnie's areas of need in reading. Reading Mastery did not show any effects on alphabetics or comprehension, according to What Works Clearinghouse's research. However, the LIPS program might be a good alternative program to try if Donnie does not respond to the selected intervention. If you look at the plus and minus signs on this page, a potentially positive ranking of 1 plus mark means the intervention had a positive effect on outcomes with no overriding contrary evidence. None of the programs we compared had 2 plus marks, which would indicate positive effects were found, and is stronger evidence the program is effective for the population we filtered for, first grade special education students. Positive effects is an indicator that multiple studies on the practice have been conducted, while potentially positive rankings like peer-assisted learning strategies and Linda Mood phoneme sequencing in this example means at least 1 study has been conducted showing it worked for this population. Note, this is not an exhaustive list of all programs, but 1 example of a possible evidence-based practice. The What Works Clearinghouse also has resource practice guides to help teachers make informed decisions about instruction. The practice guide outlines the effectiveness of each practice. The ways the evidence can be implemented in classrooms is outlined in the practice guide summary. Both documents are free and can be downloaded from What Works Clearinghouse. The practice guide on this slide has 4 evidence-based recommendations to support teachers in developing students' foundational reading skills. A link to the practice guide is provided in the resources document that goes with this module. Let's look at some of the other places you can find evidence-based practices in addition to What Works Clearinghouse. These web resources also review evidence-based practices. The websites on the behavioral side contain pertinent informational modules for students with autism and other tools for students with low-incidence disabilities. The IRIS Center is located at Vanderbilt University and is supported by the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Special Education Programs, also known as OSEP. PTAN is the Pennsylvania Technical Assistance Network and provides videos, webinars, and other resources by disability category. AFFIRM stands for Autism-Focused Intervention Resources and Modules. The websites listed here are also linked on the resources document found at the tab on the upper right of the screen. Remember to check with your district special education administrator about where to locate existing evidence-based resources available in your district. Briefly, let's talk about general education content standards. Teachers need to be familiar with grade-level content standards. Remember, it's a legal requirement to cite grade-level standards on the IEP and consider them in instruction. What parts of the standard is the student able to do? We can build from what they can do now, teach them the foundational skills they need, and scaffold up to higher content. The teacher's aim is to enable the student to get closer to grade level than they are currently performing in light of their circumstances. The State Department of Education has posted a vertical alignment document for ELA standards, English Language Arts standards, that will help you to identify the prerequisite or foundational skills needed that lead up to the grade level standard. One way I might use this document is by looking up the grade level standards Donnie is receiving instruction on in his first grade class by this yellow sticker, and then checking the previous grade standards to be sure that he has the needed foundational skills to move forward. To locate this document on the State Department of Education website, sde.idaho.gov, type vertically aligned standards in the search box. Let's listen to ways Stephanie uses standards to drive instructional decisions.
When you consider the grade level standards and getting our students to be able to reach those standards, there are a lot of different things that you can do. First of all, you want to look at the scaffolding that is needed to reach that standard, because sometimes the students are missing the prerequisite skills, and those are the skills you need to go back and focus on so they'll eventually be able to reach the standard, the grade content standard. And then other things you need to consider is the way that we can adapt a standard. So a student may not be able to write a complete essay, but they can write a paragraph. Or they may not be able to read the novel that the rest of the class is reading, but they can read something, a leveled book on with the same content. They can give answers verbally instead of giving them in writing. So you want to make sure that you're looking at those standards and adapting them for their goals and for the students as individuals.
Stephanie shared some of the ways her students access grade level standards with accommodations per her students' needs. To sum up this chapter, we discussed evidence-based practices, what they are, and how to select interventions to teach content to our students. In the next chapter, we'll discuss staying organized in case management and assigning instructional groups.